Jeff Bennett is on the Hill for us. Normally, he's part of our White House correspondent team. But this being the only story in town has focused his attention. Jeff, give us some color and try to take a swipe at answering the question I started with Senator McCaskill, and that is any evidence that any minds were changed during this long day's journey into night.
Well, Brian, I'll tell you, I spent the final portion of the evening in the Senate gallery, which is basically the Senate balcony. We're about 10 or 20 feet above the Senate floor. And my eyes were trained, of course, on those 100 senators watching silently from their seats. And so as Adam Schiff was delivering that emotional ending, that really lyrical recitation of all of the facts and evidence, where he moved from that into this portion where he implored the senators to invite in more evidence and more witnesses into these proceedings, I can tell you that all of the senators were watching him and paying attention. My colleague Frank Thorpe, who is a producer here on the Senate side of the Capitol, happened to see an encounter between Lindsey Graham and Adam Schiff in front of one of the elevators. And Lindsey Graham stuck out his hand and shook his hand and said, "You did a good job. You're well spoken." Really, it was one House manager, one former House manager to one current House manager. But listening to Chairman Schiff speak this evening, I was reminded of what he said this morning. He said that he was acutely aware that he had two audiences that he had to reach. One, those 100 senators, but also the American public. And when it comes to those senators, there's something that he said this morning that caught my ear. He said he was fully aware that most of the senators, the Republican senators, weren't really briefed on the case. And John Kennedy, the Republican senator, the loquacious Republican senator from Louisiana, told our team today that by his estimation, there were about 9 or 10 senators in that room who had really no idea what had happened during these last 3 or 4 months of House proceedings. They viewed it largely as a partisan affair. These senators were focused more on their own committee work. And so that's one of the reasons why you saw Schiff and the other House managers stitched together this tapestry of evidence and testimony, punctuating it and amplifying it with videos and clips and other sorts of evidence to kind of bring it to life, because they realized that they had to punch through the noise to make the case, not just to prove the case of culpability, but also they had to earn the right, really, to call witnesses based on the way that this trial is set up, and really to make a case to those Republicans who are already predisposed against the notion of calling witnesses. Brian.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.